ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, this is Gowri.
And of course, this is Arlene, and you're listening to ASEAN, the voice of discovery and sharing. So, this is a very fine, beautiful Thursday morning. But something really bad happened yesterday, a couple of decades ago in Malaysia.
And of course, we are talking about the May 13 incident. Was a very tragic incident that happened, but at the same time, it also taught us a lot, and it also revealed the harsh reality that we sometimes live in denial in.
Mm-hmm. Did you learn anything about May 13 in school back then?
Very briefly, probably a couple of sentences in the textbook and why it should not happen again. But yeah, it wasn't a very in-depth analysis, and I guess it's also varies according to different books that you read.
It seems to me that there's I won't say cover up, but there's a very discreet way of the government trying to not discuss too much of our past. Could be for various purpose or various intentions, but at the same time, I think it's good to know about what happened or what went wrong in the past and what we can do right in the future or right now.
It's always important to remember our history, especially when something like this happens, when it's a major incident. We want people to know about it and learn from it, but usually the government has a different perspective when they feel like something so sensitive maybe should not really be made so transparent to the public, and they kind of filter the incident and only tell you maybe the safer story or the not so scary one.
Yeah, that's the deal with it. But I think remembering May 13 is really important. But at the same time, a lot of people might not aware of. But in the local Malaysian context, there was one talk on May 13 that's supposed to be happen in University Malaya, but it was cancelled at the last minute. I think it goes. It went along the line this as what you said about the government trying to, I would say, not discuss too much what happened in the past.
And just toning it down.
Yeah.
But, when it comes to history like this, of course there are two ways to look at it. Some people would probably think like you, like, okay, it's important to know our history because we need to learn from it. But there could also be people who take it the wrong way, which is probably what the government is concerned about. But then again, it's up to the people to decide. And I guess the government cannot really try to control how people think and how we perceive things, because that is something that's up to each individual.
I can understand that, because even until now there seem to be like two major narratives coming out from what really happened during May 13, and both narratives of course have their own biases. I'm not saying that either one of them are correct, fully correct, but I think it's also based on perspective of people at that time, what they see, what they witness. That's why it's called history, I suppose. Yeah, so in a way it's good to know about our history and of course as a whole history of Southeast Asia. Talking about Malaysia again, also happened yesterday. There was I think there was an issue of migrant workers that's supposed to come to, they wanted to come to Malaysia, but they are put on hold on the sea.
I think it was the refugees actually who were left on the boats, and they had to swim to the shores, and then we had a massive influx, sort of like an overnight influx of thousands of refugees. And of course it happened yesterday, which we also talked about, but this is an update on how Malaysia is actually going to resolve this issue, because it's going to cost them a lot of money.
It costs Malaysian government $14 a day to provide shelter for an asylum seeker, and I think $14 a day for an asylum seeker is still okay, considering we house we put a lot of, I would say, quote unquote welfare towards other people as well, and I think it's fair to put welfare towards asylum seeker. I mean, I think I'm looking at the bigger picture here. It's not about just paying $14 a day or 13 ringgit per day. It's about providing human rights, I would say, concern towards these people, and you shouldn't put a price to it.
But at the same time, of course, because these people are not actually Malaysians, yes, we do have an obligation to provide shelter for the asylum seekers. And in this case, they're not only providing shelter, but also healthcare, because some of them were not in good conditions, also to provide counseling for traumatized victims, as well as clothes and food and other basic needs as well. And all this could cost a lot of money, and I guess Malaysians would not be happy as well if they learn about this.
What Malaysian government could do to not pay that much money is to address the political issue there directly, government to government. Because I think it's easy to make complaints about, all the asylum seekers are coming to Malaysia, all the refugees here are flooding Malaysia. But if Malaysian government continue to close one eye on the political situation among our neighboring countries, it will happen again and again, one way or another. I mean, if you look through history of Malaysia or Southeast Asia, this is not the first time we have floods of refugees. I think remembering back, if I'm not mistaken, either between the 60s or 70s, where there were floods of refugees from Cambodia and Vietnam, and these were people that were escaping from a civil war that was happening there. And Malaysian government, by hook or by crook, they had to house these refugees, and they have no choice. But I think the best way is to address the political situation directly. I think the non-interference approach has long been jeopardizing Malaysia a lot. It has cost Malaysia a lot, especially in terms of housing refugees.
And that's something that, of course, has been ongoing for a while, like you were saying about the non-interference policy. But it seems that we cannot really apply that anymore, especially with the thousands of sort of the overnight asylum seekers that we receive. But another thing that I want to bring up here is also in terms of providing shelter, because this figure, US 14, was actually done by the Department for Women's Development in Malaysia. But we have reported before about how the government was even reluctant to provide shelter for the existing homeless people, because they felt like that would sort of pamper them and spoil them, and they didn't think that providing shelter was actually necessary, or it's a part of their job.
I think Malaysian and also Malaysia government needs to evaluate what is our value system in this country. I mean, as vague as it sounds, but we can easily say that Islam is our official religion, and then we are multicultural and blah blah blah. But at the same time, I think value system is something that should be universal. If it applies to Malaysian, it should be applied to anyone that comes to Malaysia. And as much as it might cost Malaysia, I think Malaysian government has the responsibility to look at our long-term foreign policy. If the policy that we have long been, utilizing, such as the non-interference approach, has been, I guess, a positive cost and benefit to Malaysia, or in fact it has been negative, because whenever you have problems of dictatorship, oppression, refugees will definitely go to countries that are less problematic, more stable. And of course Malaysia, Singapore are countries that are targets for these refugees, especially if they want to go to developed nation like Australia or the US or Europe. So that's why Malaysia has been a hotbed for these asylum seekers, refugees, and also migrant workers. I think addressing this issue should be tackled at that root cause.
And I think people should also have some awareness about the difference between refugees and migrant workers, because you were just mentioning about how these refugees had to come to Malaysia or other countries that are not dangerous to their safety because of what's happening in their own country. And that's usually not the case with migrant workers. Migrant workers just usually want better employment opportunities and other benefits, but the refugees really don't have a choice. So when they seek refuge in another country, like you were saying also about what are our values towards these people and what are we exactly going to do to help them. And of course, one of the ways that you mentioned was government to government negotiation as well, that Malaysia should actually start talking to Myanmar and perhaps even Bangladesh.
And another, talking about migrant workers, another news that Malaysia wanted to discuss is the migrant issue with Myanmar and Bangladesh. So Malaysia will soon hold a discussion with Bangladesh and Myanmar to find solution to the influx of illegal immigrants from the two countries following the recent arrest of more than 1,000 of them in Langkawi. So that's quite interesting to see that migrant workers are also looking at Malaysia. I mean, I think this is an open secret that whenever you talk about, finding a better job in Southeast Asia, Malaysia usually would be the next best thing to them.
I like how you said it's an open secret, because it's another thing that it is widely discussed, but usually when it comes to cases like this, it's a matter of perception, because we know probably the best example is the US, where a lot of people say, oh, all these people are just coming in here and taking our jobs and whatnot. And the same thing happens with Malaysia. When you walk into a 7-Eleven or most places these days and you see a foreign worker instead of a Malaysian, and then the first thing that comes to people's mind is, oh, this is not their country. Why are they here and why are they doing our jobs? But in reality, Malaysians don't want to do that job anyway, which is why it's, if I may use the term, it's being outsourced to all these people who are actually willing to work it out. And that also indirectly causes the influx in illegal migrant workers who come in because they see the potential in Malaysia or other countries in Southeast Asia.
I think there's a lot of problems that Malaysian government needs to address. It is a good progress that Malaysia will be in talks on the issue itself, because I think it's high time for Malaysian government to create some kind of policy, not a hawkish policy of hampering those illegal immigrants, but a policy where we recognize laborers as equal, and at the same time we tighten security at the border, at Malaysian borders, and thirdly, I think it's important also for Malaysian to I guess address the human rights concern of migrant workers in Malaysia. A lot of them are either being paid at very low price wages, and a lot of them also have very poor living condition. Some of them might be abused by their employers, and these are issues that Malaysian government needs to address. At the same time, I think for the long term is addressing it at the ASEAN level, because I think when it comes to unskilled workers, the ASEAN level is still very much tight-lipped.
And another issue here is, of course, I think you mentioned about our borders as well. That there have been reports that the Malaysian border is one of the least guarded one, and it's so easy to get into this country. So perhaps that is another thing that they can also look at when it comes to tightening security, especially between Thailand and Malaysia, which is why the human trafficking around that area is so severe, because there is not much security guards being enforced, and it's so easy for people to move about.
Anyway, we'll take one short break. When we return, we'll talk more about also a similar issue, but this time more on the Rohingya issue in this region.
ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hi, this is Arlene.
Hello, this is Gowri.
And of course, you are still with us on ASEAN Daily. Earlier on, we mentioned about the Rohingya refugees and migrant workers. But this is an incident that happened quite recently. Actually, it was yesterday reported in a lot of the major media on a boat where they have hundreds of Rohingya on the way to Malaysia. In fact, they are right now on the sea, and United Nations is pleading Malaysia to accept these boat people. They are, of course, political asylum seekers, but Malaysia, unfortunately, is silent so far on this.
And it's a bit of a shame because we are, well, the chairman of ASEAN this year, and when it comes to issues like this, by right, Malaysia should be the first one as to lead all the efforts and also to sort of make the first step as well in terms of human rights or cracking down on human trafficking, and also in terms of providing shelter, or also, if I may put it in another way, to actually take the refugees in and see what we can do with them, because like we were also discussing earlier, refugees are different from migrant workers.
Yes,
and they don't really have a choice. It's not like they just woke up and they're like, okay, I feel like going to Malaysia today. That's not the case. They have been tortured and being treated terribly in their own country, and this is probably their last resort, that they felt like, okay, I have to get out of here and go to Malaysia. And it's very, very I would say shameful for Malaysia to remain silent on this issue and to just leave them on the boat, and also to say things like, oh, we don't want them here and we will only rescue them if the boat is sinking.
Which is illogical. You want to wait for this refugee to actually, put a hole on their boat so that you can accept them. But then even if Malaysia accept them to the Malaysian shore, they will still put in detention centers, and Malaysian detention centers are well known for its harsh treatment towards refugees. Malaysia is not the best place for refugees to come, and Malaysia has made it clear that it doesn't really accept refugees. It doesn't recognize the status, and this is one of the unfortunate part of Malaysia within Southeast Asia, where we are closing one eye on the future of Malaysia, knowing very well that we are the chairman of ASEAN. We could have done something more in terms of addressing political situation within our neighboring countries, and also refugee situation that could have jeopardized our reputation as a nation.
And even our very own Deputy Home Minister actually said that he doesn't want them here because we are not prepared to accept that number of people coming into our shores, and that those people who are already being given shelter and food, they are also going to be turned away very soon. And he says that Malaysia, like I said earlier, would only consider rescuing them if the boat is sinking. Otherwise, they are just going to call for a meeting with Myanmar and Bangladesh, like we were saying earlier.
This is the part where I will be asking pass. So you could have used your hudud card to make hudud sounds more appealing.
And be an opportunist there, I guess. I didn't. You should be the advisor. Arlene.
No, I mean, if you really look into this is a real human rights crisis, and we are actually going to probably murder the whole people, the whole population within the boat itself, either because they will be die of sick hunger, or the lack of health care, or they will die going back all the way back to Myanmar, where they will be persecuted for just being a Rohingya. So if PAS is smart enough, or PAS is sincere enough with its hudud card, they could have used the card and say that, hey, you know what? This is against religion.
Well, this is, yes, against religion and against
especially, Rohingyas are their own I would say Muslim brethren. So they could have done something to save another Muslim's lives.
That's right. I mean, even if you look at Myanmar, where they claim to be a Buddhist and that majority of them are Buddhist, and if we were to look at Buddhism, it really doesn't tally with the actions of the people in Myanmar and how they are treating Rohingyas. Well, yes, they are there, they are of a different religion, ethnicity, but that doesn't give anybody the right to treat them like they're not humans and to deny them of all their basic rights and necessities. And things are so bad that they're actually forced to leave and go on a boat to a different country, and now we are also being silent on this matter, and they are just sort of left there. And this I'm not sure if it's appropriate for me to say this, but it's kind of like the Titanic issue, where the boat of people just waited and waited and waited for help, but it never came, and they just eventually just passed on in the boat itself, which is really sad.
And I think the worst part is it wasn't just Malaysia, but Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand also turned away the refugee. In fact, it was mentioned by Major General Warochon Tipak, a spokesman of the Thailand's ruling junta. He said that Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand have decided not to receive the boat people as far as they are aware of. And he declined to comment on the UN Refugee Agency UNHCR's appeal on Tuesday for the international search and rescue operation for the many stranded on the seas between Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia. The UN has said that several thousand migrants were abandoned at sea by smugglers following a Thai government crackdown on human trafficking. So there you go. It seems like the issue, even though it has been discussed on at a meeting among 15 countries, which will be held on May 29 as well, but I think no action might be taken towards this.
And of course, you were mentioning earlier about UNHCR and how they are actually mentioned they're surprised that all these countries are talking about turning back one of the boats, especially Indonesia, because Indonesia had a similar situation a few months back when it comes to Australia, and they were not happy when the Australian government turned their boats away. But it doesn't seem like they are walking the talk as well, because now when another boat of people need their help, they are doing the same thing that they criticize, which is also turning the boats away. Yes,
and what is even worse is we might not realize, but history is going back in full circle to Malaysia. A lot of people might not be aware, but in 1979, also there was a boat people, but at that time it was from Vietnam. It was a civil war that happened, and echoes from the Home Ministry back then to shoot on sight, warning against Vietnamese refugees. This has come back to haunt us again, and it is quite sad that at that time in 1979, then Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad said Malaysia would expel 75,540 boat people, as well as arm itself with legal powers to shoot new arrivals on sight. Now you know Mahathir is quite a shooter.
Well, yes, and of course that is a very harsh measure, and you were also saying about how history is in a full circle, and we definitely don't want to go back to what happened back in 1979, and we have come a long way, especially looking at Malaysia. We are supposed to be a progressive, moderate nation, and I really hope that Malaysia will stop being silent on the matter and like you were saying, look back at our values as a Muslim country as well, or whatever religion it is. It always goes back to human rights and treating other people as your fellow brother and sister.
And it's not just human rights. Geopolitically, it's not strategic for Malaysia to just turn away these people, because in the future it will be a headache for Malaysia as we progress as a regional bloc. I think Malaysia, if it's smart enough to understand this on the economic scale of it, Malaysia needs to address it indefinitely. on the other hand, besides the boat people, I think ASEAN is also being urged to tackle the Rohingya issue immediately. So former Malaysian lawmaker Yasmani Yusof said that it's a missed opportunity that that ASEAN failed to discuss the issue of refugees from Myanmar at the recent ASEAN Summit, and I totally agree with it. I didn't hear a single sentence that actually addressed the Rohingya issue. In fact, there were virtually no mentioning of Rohingya other than at a very surface level on how Malaysia would tackle this. But in reality, if we were to progress as an ASEAN Economic Community AEC, human rights will be one of the elements that needs to be addressed.
That's right. The thing about the ASEAN Summit was, of course, it had to be very diplomatic at the same time because of all the leaders getting together, and even at the mention at the South China Sea, and China was already not happy that it was being discussed at the ASEAN Summit because they said it's none of our business, and I can imagine why they were quite particular about bringing up the Rohingya issue as well. But that doesn't mean that we can just push it aside and discuss it at a convenient time, because something like this could just happen, which they did not foresee, that there could just be a huge influx of refugees just leaving Myanmar one day and coming to all these countries. And how are we going to address it? We were not prepared for this at all. None of us were prepared, not Indonesia, not Malaysia, not even Thailand. But Thailand is actually sort of stepping up and saying that they will do something about this, and in fact they were the one who started with the whole crackdown on human trafficking. So coming back to ASEAN, of course, when it comes to Rohingyas, it's a very, very sensitive issue, but it's very, very important, and somebody will have to bring it up eventually, because right now it is affecting all of us, especially the countries on this region with Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, and the CLMV countries.
So anyway, I think the Rohingya issue will be an ongoing discussion at during ASEAN, especially the issue itself is of a much concern for ASEAN itself. On the other hand, this is more about Indonesia. So in a way, I want to address how the Indonesia is dealing with the Papua issue. It seems like Jokowi wants to strengthen the ties with Papua New Guinea. Also, not just Papua New Guinea, but also in terms of Papua itself. I think Jokowi is looking at Papua to be integrated, although they are already integrated, of course, but he really wants to strengthen the nationalism of all islands into one single Indonesian bloc. You see that with the release of the the Papuan political prisoners, and now you're seeing it with the opening up of access to Papua. At the same time, Jokowi wanting to have greater relationship with its neighboring Papua New Guinea. So it's definitely a good prospect, right?
And if I may just digress a little bit, do you feel like the power of social media has actually sort of helped to change Jokowi's perception about other countries, or even his foreign policies? Because before this, I think it would be probably unimaginable for Jokowi to actually release political prisoners, but he has actually got to a point where he can bring himself to do that, especially with what happened with the Bali 9 execution.
I think he wants to change the tone of the discussion about his administration into a more positive one, and I can see this definitely changing his outlook. I think a lot of people are happy that finally, Papua is giving the same kind of limelight as Jakarta does, and in response to a move by President Jokowi to remove barriers access for foreign journalists seeking to report on Papua, and Indonesian Democratic Party of Struggle Lawmaker said that the journalists aiming to use the right must be aware of the legal limitation. Unfortunately, I think that he's still very much cautious, but still I would applaud him for being able to get foreign journalists to access Papua.
And he's definitely being more open as well when it comes to ties with other countries or other states as well. Because you were just talking about Papua New Guinea and how he is very optimistic that the bilateral relations between Indonesia and PNG will actually keep improving because PNG is a very important partner for Indonesia and they even share the same island.
That's true. And I think Papua has long been plagued with a lot of political issues between Indonesian government and the Papua. I think it was the Free Papua movement group where they aspire to have an independent Papua. But I think it's good to have an autonomous Papua. I mean, this is just based on my perspective. I think it would be great to have an autonomous Papua. They self-govern themselves. At the same time, they are still part of Indonesia, just like what we see in Aceh. It is great to create self-autonomous states within a large federal, I would say, republic like Indonesia. On the other hand, Jokowi is strengthening ties with Papua New Guinea. There you go. We seldom hear about Papua New Guinea except for cannibalism, I guess, in the past, of course.
Well, yeah, it's another one of Jokowi's maybe his proactive measure. He's not only strengthening ties with Papua New Guinea, he's also planning to go to Washington, which we would talk about later. And it seems that Indonesia's relations with its eastern neighbors are in the spotlight because he is actually talking to the Melanesian Spearhead Group, which is a group of Papuan independence activists who want to become an official member, and therefore Jokowi actually visited Port Moresby, and he's calling for closer ties with Papua New Guinea, especially in terms of economic development.
So he said that he's optimistic that the bilateral relations between Indonesia and the Papua New Guinea will keep on improving, and I can see that why. I think it's good that once in a while we highlight news about Papua New Guinea, because I think there's a lot of interesting things that we can learn from, not just in terms of economy, but also in terms of culture and the politics there. I'm talking about Washington. So why he's there again?
Well, I believe he's trying to also establish the relationship between US and Indonesia because they have, of course, they do have a relationship, but it has not been warm, and he's trying
so how can we warm it up?
Well, it's up to Jokowi to decide how he's going to warm it. So he will be he's been making plans to visit Washington, and Washington is also hoping that now that Jokowi is in place, that might usher in closer ties between the two countries, where it wasn't so smooth. Like I was saying earlier, it was pretty rough during the time of Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono during his administration, and they are hopeful that this visit will actually provide an opportunity to sort of reset the relationship between the two countries and increase their bilateral trade, because Jokowi did visit a couple of countries in Japan and China, and trying to get investors in, trying to
his Asia trip was very successful. He managed to garner a lot of trade deals in billions, in fact. But for the US, it's a bit tricky because Indonesia has made clear that it doesn't want to join TPPA. So I think it's either a bilateral free trade agreement, or it would be a very strategic economic agreement between both the nations.
I'm glad you brought that up, because even Washington is saying that Jokowi's long-term economic policies are very unclear to them, and therefore, like I was saying, he did make several trips to try and woo in investors, but in terms of the US, he's probably trying to look for an increase there as well, but still quite confusing to them and a lot of people.
Don't worry. Jokowi will do it.
He'll do it.
Maybe later on we will be more clearer on his economic policy. Anyway, that's all from us today. Thanks for listening to our morning rant on ASEAN Daily.
And if you have any feedback or comments, you can leave it on our Facebook page or also tweet us. And also follow our YouTube channel for all the daily news and podcasts.
And of course, don't forget to listen to us on the go via your mobile via your TuneIn app. You can search us at Durian ASEAN. Of course, you can always go to our website durianasean.com to search for the latest news and other podcasts and videos that we have. That's all from me, Arlene.
This is Gowri.
Bye.